My wife cheated with my best friend, then stole $200, $0 from our joint account to buy his silence. Now she's suing me for half the house and claiming I'm the criminal in a web of lies I didn't even see coming. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get like this, but here I am, sitting in my living room trying to piece together how everything fell apart so fast. The craziest part, I found out about my wife, Lisa, cheating on me from a damn text message. Yeah, a text. It was supposed to be just a quick check on something, but what I saw changed everything in an instant. We'd been married for about 7 years. I thought I knew her, thought I knew us. We had a decent life, 2 kids, a house in the suburbs, and a pretty stable routine. I worked as a project manager, she stayed home with the kids, and we split the bills pretty evenly. Nothing too fancy, but it was ours. At least I thought it was. But recently, I'd noticed odd things. Lisa started staying late at work more often. Her phone was glued to her hand. And she'd get defensive when I asked about her whereabouts. She'd brush me off with some excuse about deadlines or client dinners. The first few times I thought maybe she was just stressed, but there was a weird edge to her tone, defensive, almost hostile. It didn't sit right, but I pushed it aside, telling myself I was overthinking it. Then came the night I found her phone lying on the kitchen counter, unlocked. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I just wanted to check the time, but then I saw a message pop up from Jason. It was a name I'd never heard her mention before. The message was short but explicit. "Can't wait to see you tonight, need you so bad, love you." My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. My hands were trembling. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't even know what I was feeling: anger, betrayal, sadness, maybe all of it. I kept thinking, how could she do this? After everything. I waited until she went to bed, then snuck into her phone to read more. There were dozens of texts, calls, and photos. Everything confirmed it. Wasn't a one-time thing. She'd been sneaking around for months. The worst part, I saw her mention money, how she was going to get Jason to help her cover some expenses, how they'd split the costs of some hotel. I also noticed her talking about the plan to get me out of the house, to fix everything with the money she'd stolen. That's when I remembered the bank statements I'd seen earlier that week, the odd withdrawals, and the sudden absence of some large sums from our joint account. I couldn't believe it. She was cheating on me with my best friend, Mark, and she'd stolen over $200, $0 to keep him quiet. That's when I knew this wasn't just a fling. This was a full-blown betrayal, and it was about money, lies, and manipulation. The next day I sat her down, tried to confront her. Her reaction floored me. She acted like I was crazy, called me paranoid, said I was imagining things. "You're overreacting, Jason. You're just jealous. Mark's just an old friend. You're always accusing me of things I didn't do," she snapped, rolling her eyes. But I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, everything. Still, she kept lying, spinning some story about how I was paranoid, how I was accusing her of sex with Mark just because she wanted to hurt me. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about cheating. It was about control, money, and her trying to manipulate the narrative. She was bitchy, aggressive, and completely dismissive of my feelings. I felt like I was losing my mind. I trusted her for years, and now I was staring at the woman I loved, lying through her teeth, trying to convince me I was the one in the wrong. It was like waking up in someone else's nightmare. The emotional toll hit me hard. I went from feeling angry to devastated, then numb. I kept wondering how she could be so cold, so calculating. I thought about the kids, how they'd be affected, but mostly I felt betrayed, stupid for not seeing the signs sooner. I kept replaying everything, trying to find a moment I missed, some sign I ignored. But the truth was, I was blind to the whole thing, until that message, that theft, and her lies shattered everything I believed in. I knew I had to make a decision. Part of me wanted to confront her again, to demand answers, to get her to admit everything. But I could see the walls she was putting up, the way she was spinning her web of lies. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not with my heart, not with my money, not with my life. I wasn't sure what was next, but I knew I couldn't stay in this toxic, broken marriage anymore. The betrayal had cut too deep, and the trust was gone. I just didn't know how to pick up the pieces, or what the future held now that I'd been by my own wife and my best friend. After everything I discovered, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind kept running over the same scenes, the texts, the money, her cold face when I confronted her. It was like a bomb went off inside me, and I couldn't find the pieces to put back together. I'd always believed in honesty, loyalty, the kind of love that's supposed to last a lifetime. Turns out that was just a fairy tale I told myself. The worst part was realizing she'd been lying for months, all those late nights, the secret phone calls, the business trips she kept claiming were work-related. I trusted her to be honest, to be faithful, and she'd been screwing around with Mark, my best friend, right under my nose. I saw her face when I told her I knew. Her eyes flashed with anger and then that bitchy smirk like she thought she was untouchable. She said I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that Mark was just a friend she'd known for years. She called me paranoid, insecure, and said I was making a mountain out of a molehill, but I had proof. I had the bank statements, the texts, the photos. I even found a hotel receipt from a week ago, paid with our joint account, of course, showing she'd been with Mark. That was the moment I realized how deep this went. She stolen $200, $0 from us, using our shared savings to buy her silence. That money was supposed to be for our house, the kids' college fund, our future. Instead, she used it to keep her affair hidden, to buy Mark's silence and cover her tracks. I couldn't believe how she'd manipulated everything, me, our life, even the bank account. I was furious, but I kept my cool. I knew I had to think carefully. I couldn't just blow up and lose everything. I wanted to confront her again, get her to admit what she'd done, but I also knew she'd lie, spin stories, try to turn it around on me. That's exactly what she did. When I sat her down, her tone was dismissive, like I was bothering her. "Jason, you're overreacting. You're just jealous because Mark and I are friends. We didn't do anything. You're making shit up," she snapped, crossing her arms. She looked so bitchy, so dismissive of my pain. I couldn't believe how she was acting. It was like I was talking to a stranger, not the woman I'd married. I told her I knew about the affair, about the money, everything. She just rolled her eyes and said I was crazy for accusing her of sex with Mark. She claimed I was paranoid, that I was jealous, and that I was trying to ruin her life. She even tried to gaslight me, saying I was imagining things, that I was insecure. But I had the evidence. How could I be imagining a hotel receipt, texts, and bank withdrawals? My mind was racing, trying to process how this woman I loved could lie so easily. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and sick to my stomach. For the first time in my life, I wondered if I ever really knew her at all. She'd been bitchy and dismissive, trying to brush everything off like it was nothing. I saw through her act. She was a master manipulator, and I was just a pawn in her game. I could feel my emotional state swinging wildly. At first, I was just angry, so angry I wanted to smash something. Then sadness hit me hard. I thought about the life we built, the vows we took, the trust I thought we had. I felt stupid for not seeing the signs earlier, for ignoring the warning signs. I'd been blind to her lies, and now I was paying the price. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, her words, her lies, the stolen money. I wondered how she could be so cold, so calculated. I wondered if she even loved me, or if I'd been just another mark in her game. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was bleeding inside. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what yet. The next morning, I started making plans. I knew I couldn't stay. I couldn't trust her anymore, not with my heart or my money. I decided I'd talk to a lawyer, see what rights I had, and figure out how to protect myself and the kids. My mind was racing. Should I file for divorce? Should I confront Mark? I wasn't sure what the right move was, but I knew I had to act fast. All I kept thinking was, how did it come to this? How did the woman I loved and trusted turn into this manipulative, lying stranger? I'd never seen her like this before. So bitchy, so dismissive, so willing to lie and steal just to keep her secrets. I felt so betrayed, so broken. And yet, deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of a long, ugly battle. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to process everything. I told myself I needed to stay calm, get my ducks in a row, and figure out what to do next. But inside, I was raging. Every time I looked at her, I saw the woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd married, and it made me sick. How could she turn into this manipulative, selfish person? The woman who could lie so effortlessly, steal from us, and then act like she was the victim. It was like I'd been living with a stranger all along. I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find: bank statements, texts, emails, her social media messages. I wanted to be ready when I finally confronted her again, to make sure I had everything in order. I even contacted a lawyer who confirmed I had a solid case to protect my assets and possibly get full custody of the kids if things went that far. I couldn't believe I was even thinking about divorce, but I knew I couldn't stay with her. Not after what I'd uncovered. One thing that kept gnawing at me was the money. That $200, $0 she stole wasn't just a number. It was our future, our kids' college fund, our retirement savings, the down payment for a house we'd planned to buy. All gone because she was willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate to keep her affair hidden. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? How did I not see her slipping away bit by bit? I also started to realize how much her behavior had changed. She became bitchier, more dismissive, almost hostile. She would snap at the kids for the smallest thing, like they were inconveniences. She was always on her phone, texting Mark or whoever else she was talking to. And when I brought up the money or her late nights, she'd get defensive, accuse me of being controlling or paranoid. She'd call me insecure, say I was losing my mind. I felt like I was losing her, but also losing myself in the process. The day I decided to confront her again, I knew I had to do it carefully. I didn't want her to spin her lies again or gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. I told her I knew everything: the affair, the money, the lies. Her reaction was classic. She looked surprised for a second, then her face twisted into that bitchy smirk. "You're crazy, Jason. You're just jealous because Mark and I are close. You're imagining things. You're paranoid," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. I was done with her dismissiveness. I told her I wasn't going to stand for her lies anymore. I laid out all the evidence I had, from the bank statements to the hotel receipts. She tried to deny everything, but I saw right through her. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was attacking her for no reason, that Mark was just a friend. But I knew better. I knew what I'd seen. I knew what she'd done. Her face contorted with anger and she started yelling at me. "You're the real criminal here, Jason. You're the one who's been controlling, who's been cheating on me, who's been stealing from us. You're just trying to ruin me because I won't play your stupid game anymore," she spat. She was trying to turn it all around, make me look like the bad guy, but I wasn't falling for it. I just looked at her and thought, how did I get here? How did the woman I loved become this person? The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt like I was drowning. I was angry, yes, but also deeply hurt. How could she do this to me? To our family, to our kids? I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been blind all along. The truth was, I didn't want to believe she was capable of this level of betrayal. But the evidence was right in front of me. I couldn't deny it anymore. That night I stayed up late, staring at the ceiling. I thought about everything: the good times, the bad times, the lies, the betrayal. It all seemed so distant now. I wondered if I'd ever trust again, if I'd ever feel safe in this marriage. I was angry at her, yes, but I also felt a profound sadness. I'd lost the woman I thought I knew, and now I was left picking up the pieces of a life I no longer recognized. I knew I had to make a decision soon. I couldn't keep going like this, living in a house filled with lies and deceit. I made up my mind. I would confront her one last time, lay everything out, and then decide what to do. I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. The betrayal was too deep, the damage too extensive. The only thing left was to face truth head-on, no matter how painful it might be. The day I decided to finally confront her, I felt like I was walking into a storm I couldn't predict. I'd spent days analyzing, planning, and trying to brace myself for the fallout. I knew she'd lie, deny, and try to manipulate her way out of it. She always did. But I also knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see the truth. I called her into the living room, told her I needed to talk. She looked annoyed, like I was bothering her again. That bitchy smirk was back on her face as she sat down across from me. I took a deep breath and laid everything out: screenshots of her texts with Mark, the hotel receipt, the bank statements showing the withdrawals, the stolen money. I even pulled up the security camera footage from the hotel parking lot just to be thorough. Her reaction was instant. Her eyes widened for a second, then she scoffed. "You're crazy, Jason. You're making this all up. You're just jealous because I don't want to be with someone who's so insecure. You're paranoid, and you're always accusing me of things I didn't do." She sat there trying to dismiss everything as if it was nothing. That bitchy attitude, that dismissiveness, it made me so furious I could barely hold back. I told her I had enough, that I knew she'd been lying for months, that she'd stolen from us, and that I was done trusting her. I said I was filing for divorce and that I was taking everything I could, our house, the savings, everything. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "You're not serious," she snapped. "You're just jealous because Mark and I have something real. You're so insecure you can't handle the fact that I don't want to be with you anymore." Her words cut deep. I felt the anger boiling over. I told her she was a liar, a thief, and a manipulator. I told her I knew about all her lies, about the money, about Mark, about everything she'd done to destroy us. Her face went red and she started yelling. "You're the real criminal here, Jason. You've been cheating on me, controlling me, stealing from me. You're the one who's been lying all along." I couldn't believe how she was spinning everything. She was trying to turn me into the bad guy, like I was the one who betrayed her, but I had the proof. Every piece of evidence was laid out, and I wasn't leaving any room for her to deny it. I told her she'd crossed every line, that she'd lied, stolen, and betrayed everything we stood for. She stood up, face twisted with rage. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, you're not. You're just a controlling, insecure bastard who can't handle losing his wife and his best friend. Mark and I are better without you. You're nothing but a criminal, Jason, and I'm going to take everything from you, half the house, the kids, everything." Her words hit me like a punch. I felt a cold wave of shock and anger all at once. She was actually threatening me, trying to take what she'd already stolen and turn it into some kind of weapon. I looked at her, feeling a mix of disgust and pity. She was so full of herself, so convinced she was right, that she didn't see how broken she really was. I told her I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I was done. I told her I was filing for divorce and I'd fight for custody of the kids and my share of the house. I knew she'd try to fight dirty, but I was prepared. I'd been gathering evidence, talking to lawyers, and planning my next move. I didn't want her to get away with this, not after everything. As she stormed out of the room, yelling and cursing, I sat down, exhausted. I was drained, physically, emotionally, mentally. I just laid everything out, and I knew I'd made my decision. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd trusted with my life, was gone. And the only thing I could do now was pick up the pieces and figure out how to move forward from this nightmare. I looked around the house at the life we'd built, and I realized how much I'd been blind. I'd ignored the warnings, dismissed my gut feelings, and now I was paying the price. But I also knew one thing. I wasn't going to be her scapegoat anymore. I was done being a victim of her lies and manipulations. It was time to fight for myself, for my kids, and for a future without her toxic shadow hanging over everything. The days that followed were a blur of lawyer meetings, phone calls, and sleepless nights. I was trying to stay level-headed, but inside I was a storm of emotions: anger, betrayal, heartbreak, and a gnawing sense of helplessness. I couldn't believe she'd gone this far, stealing from us, lying, manipulating everyone around her just to cover her tracks. And Mark, my supposed best friend, he was just as guilty in my eyes. How could he do this to me, to us? The lawyer confirmed what I already suspected. I had a solid case to fight for the house, the savings, and custody of the kids. But it wasn't going to be easy. Lisa wasn't just some innocent victim. She was prepared to fight dirty. She hired her own lawyer, and I knew she'd try every trick in the book to get what she wanted. That's when I realized this was no longer just about cheating or money. It was about power, control, and revenge. I decided I had to be strategic. I gathered every piece of evidence I could: emails, bank statements, her texts with Mark, even some of her social media messages where she was openly bragging about how she was going to win this fight. I knew she'd try to spin everything, say I was the bad guy, but I had the proof to back up my story. I also hired a private investigator to look into her activities when she was supposedly working late. Turns out she'd been meeting Mark at hotels, going on trips, and even hiding cash she'd stolen from us in a secret account. All of this made me realize how deep her deception went. She'd been planning this for months. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about destroying everything we'd built, just to keep her secrets safe. I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. And the worst part, I was starting to doubt myself, wondering if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been too blind to see what was happening right under my nose. One day, I had a meeting with my lawyer to go over the strategy. She warned me Lisa would try to claim I was abusive, controlling, or even a criminal, anything to turn the courts against me. I knew I had to be prepared for that. I also decided I'd fight for full custody of the kids, knowing Lisa's manipulative nature and her willingness to lie to get what she wanted. I loved those kids and I wasn't going to let her take them away from me without a fight. Meanwhile, I started to see her more clearly. Her bitchy attitude, her dismissiveness, they weren't just signs of stress. They were her true colors shining through. She'd become someone I barely recognized, selfish, manipulative, and utterly ruthless. I realized I'd been living with a person who was capable of anything to get her way, and that realization hurt more than anything. I trusted her for so long, and she'd used that trust to destroy me. One afternoon, she came home furious, claiming I was trying to ruin her life and that I had no right to take her to court. She yelled at me, calling me a controlling bastard and accusing me of cheating on her, again trying to turn the tables. I just looked at her and shook my head. I knew her game. I knew how she was trying to manipulate everyone, including the kids, into thinking she was the victim. But I also knew I had to stay strong, keep my focus, and let the evidence speak for itself. Deep down, I was exhausted. I'd been fighting so hard to keep my sanity, my dignity, and my family intact. I knew this wasn't over, not even close. But I also realized I couldn't keep living in this toxic environment. I had to take control of my life, protect my kids, and get justice for what she'd done. I didn't know exactly how it would all turn out, but I was determined to see it through. No matter how much she tried to tear me down, I refused to let her win. That night I sat alone in the dark, thinking about everything, her lies, her betrayal, the stolen money, and the future I still had to fight for. I kept asking myself if I should even try to salvage this marriage, or if it was better to just cut my losses and move on. But deep down, I knew the most important thing was to protect myself and my kids from her manipulations. Whatever came next, I was ready to face it. I owed myself that much. The courtroom was a battlefield I never thought I'd have to walk into. All my evidence laid out, my lawyer by my side, and Lisa sitting across from me, her face a mask of defiance and disdain. The judge looked over the documents, the testimonies, the proof of her theft, her affair, and her manipulations. Every detail I gathered painted a picture of betrayal so deep it felt like my heart was being torn apart all over again. But I knew I had to stay focused, stay strong. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, for me, for my kids, for the life I thought I was building. Lisa did everything she could to spin her version of the story. She claimed I was controlling, jealous, and that I'd been cheating all along, an outright lie, but she knew how to twist words to her advantage. Her lawyer tried to paint me as some kind of villain, but I had the proof, screenshots, bank records, witness statements from the private investigator. I could see her desperation, how her bitchy, manipulative facade was cracking under pressure. When it came time for the judge to decide, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I knew I'd done everything possible to protect myself and my children. The court ordered Lisa to pay back the stolen money, to relinquish her claim to the house, and granted me primary custody of the kids. The ruling wasn't just a victory for me, it was a validation of the truth. I finally had a clear path forward. In the aftermath, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The house was mine again, and I could start rebuilding my life. The kids were safe with me, and I was determined to give them stability and love, away from the chaos Lisa had created. I cut ties with Mark entirely. He was just another piece of the betrayal I'd been by. Trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair, and I wasn't about to let him ruin what little piece I had left. Looking back, I see how much I've grown from this nightmare. It's been a brutal lesson in trust, betrayal, and resilience. I learned that some people will do anything to get what they want, even if it means destroying everything around them. I also learned that standing up for myself, even when it's the hardest thing I've ever done, is the only way to reclaim my life. Now I focus on healing, on making sure my kids feel safe and loved, and on never letting someone manipulate or betray me like that again. I've found a new sense of strength, one I didn't know I had. The betrayal still hurts, but it's also made me more cautious, more aware of what's real and what's just a carefully crafted lie. I trust myself more now, and that's the best revenge I could ask for. To anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, I'll say this: don't ignore the signs. Trust your gut, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals who people really are. And sometimes, the only way to find peace is to walk away from the lies and start over. It's hard, it's painful, but in the end, it's worth it. Because you deserve honesty, loyalty, and a life built on truth, not lies.